what you need to do is put your phone down and do something else, I think, like, because then you start living a reactive life.
The more people I knew in real estate, the better off my business was.
24 goals get missed because you're barely starting to work on 2024, halfway through 2024.
They're scared to not, like, I'm gonna say something people are not gonna like. They're not gonna like me.
My signs are up and people came up to me like, what makes you want to run? I'm like, this would be my second term.
Build up a business, have a business, and then kind of get into the politics so you understand like what's actually going to affect what.
Sometimes you're probably just afraid to say something.
So what are some of the things why they should vote for you? Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Totem Podcast, where an act of rebellion is to question. Today we got a very special guest for you. Like I always like to do, I'm doing my research, and as I'm doing my research on him, you know, it's a very impressive one. I think you should do a little bit, maybe more speaking on it. I think it's great. I think we need more people like this in the community. But Brian Urdiales, welcome.
No, thanks, guys. It's nice meeting you guys. I've known your dad. I've known your grandparents. I think my dad sold your grandparents' homes when he first started selling. So,
yeah.
But we were talking about, you did some research and you didn't know that. I was just saying that I should probably talk about it more, but I really don't. For instance, like I'm running for re-election for city council, and my signs are up and people came up to me like, what makes you want to run? I'm like, this would be my second term. And I was like, they're like, oh, I didn't know you were in city council.
So people don't even know that you are that you're already in.
Yeah, people
city
didn't even
council.
know. And I was like, it's not like I go around introducing myself like Brian Urdiales, councilman.
Councilman.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's councilman for you, all right?
So I was just like sitting there. I was like, maybe I don't know. But that was kind of eye opening. Like maybe that's just how people just don't pay attention to like the local municipal politics, like what's going on. So I don't know, and maybe it's partially my fault as well. So
Yeah. Well, when that person asked you, so what are some of the things why they should vote for you?
You know, when I ran for like 4 years ago, when I put in my petition, I was going against the incumbent, and literally probably like 3 days before it went to the vote, or not to the vote, but to the county clerk or whoever does it when they put your names on the ballot, he dropped out. So I ran, basically it was unopposed. So I didn't have to buy signs. It was kind of cool. It was stress-free. And I really didn't know what I was getting into, other than, you could say I was involved with like Colorado Association of Realtors, government affairs. I was a lobbyist liaison to Senator Gardner, Congress, when he was also in Congress. And I just feel like it was a good thing just to get my feet wet here. And so that's why I put my name in there, and I learned a lot. And the reason I want to run again is I feel like it's a 4-year term. It takes you 2 years kind of like to get any traction and to kind of figure it out. You kind of just sit there on your hands. You read stuff when sometimes you're probably just afraid to say something, you know? Because you're like, I sit next to the mayor, Ron Shaver, who'd been on like 2 terms of council as a councilman. He was on his second term as mayor. He worked for the city for like 30 years. Like, I was envious of this guy. Like, he knew so much about the city, and compared to what I knew, I didn't know anything going in. So by the time you get into it, you're up for re-election again, you know, and this time I got somebody running against me. So it takes a lot of time putting out the signs and doing all that kind of stuff, and it's stressful, you know, thinking like, well, maybe I won't win. But why I want to come back is I feel like there's a lot of things to finish, like, that we've started. In terms of, I kind of rode in on everybody's coattails on the field house that opened up when I was in there, and I'd like to get that open a little bit more. I think it doesn't open until noon on the weekends, kind of get those hours going. I know there's like an ad hoc committee that I'm sitting on for the swimming pool, possibly indoor pool coming in, because the pool down in Riverside, it's, you know, we're putting a lot of Band-Aids on that thing, and they're not cheap Band-Aids. You know, when I first got in there, I think the boiler broke. The pool furthest to the west was leaking. So it was kind of like, what came first, the chicken or egg? Like, did the boiler break because it was leaking so much and it was trying to keep up with the heat? Or, like, nobody knew, you know? So.
But before we get going a little bit more, Guys, remember, we're on all the podcast streaming platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, everything. Make sure to click subscribe, smash that thumbs up button, especially if you like today's guest and the topics we're about to dive in a little bit more today. But yeah, what made you kind of get into, I guess, the politics of city council?
Kind of like I said, I was more involved. So this was like my 20th year in real estate. When I got involved, I was set on what's called LPC for the Colorado Association of Realtors. And I was also the president of the Morgan County Board of Realtors at the time. And then my buddy Corey, him and I went to school together at CSU, he won the House in DC. And then the state called me a car, and they're like, hey, do you want to be his FPC? I'm like, what's an FPC? So they're like, basically, when there's a House bill or this, and we need somebody to talk to Corey, you give him a call. But at the national level, we already have all of our lobbyists, but they're just like, this gives it so like you guys are buddies or you guys went to school with somebody, sometimes I can talk a little bit more freely with those guys.
Okay.
So that really sparked an interest with me. When I went into that was 2008. The market just crashed. Obama was like the president. They like sat us in a room and they just told us like all these things are on the chopping block. And it was scary to see like what was going on with everything.
So you got like the behind the scenes kind of view on what was going on.
Mm-hmm. They talked about getting rid of like 30-year terms. Like I think the United States is one of the only places that has a 30-year amortization on a house.
Really?
All these different things they talked about getting rid of. And he kind of just sat there and talked to my dad later. And he's like, how's it going? I'm like, I don't know. Do we still want to sell real estate after this, man? This is going to get crazy. But
these conversations were like before the whole crash in 2008 or after?
After.
Okay.
So I flew out, say like in 2008, like say they're going on in 2008. Yeah, I flew out there and they just sat us. And there's other FPCs. So there's like an FPC for every congressman, an FPC for every senator. Okay. So they kind of just sat us in a room. Some represent Dems, some the Republicans, and everybody's got to take a different angle because everybody's congressman, congresswoman, et cetera, has a different angle on it. Mm-hmm. So you got to talk to them from different angles. Okay. So like sometimes I'd go in Corey, and they'd be like, hey, will you sit in with this guy and talk with him? Like I'd go into like with one of the guys from Utah and talk to their senator with them. So it was pretty cool. But basically getting back to that is that LP. So then I went on to become Government Affairs VP for the Colorado Association of Realtors. And we also had lobbyists already for the state. I'd work with them, and we would House bills that affect real estate, Senate bills that affect real estate, in terms of like at the state level. We sat in that. Always talk about like all the different things coming up for rentals. Like it's changed, it's crazy. And then I was out of it, and then this kind of came up, and I was like, I think I'm going to do it, and I put my name in. So just to see how it would go, but.
That's great. One thing that's I love and I think is really interesting that a lot of people I think just kind of skim over is the thing like people that are like I guess you could say like they have a seat that are kind of like in power you could say that they actually have like a business or something like you've gone through the business so you see the business side aspects of it instead of someone that's just kind of always just in there doing a decision because you say if you pass XYZ law, you know how that's going to affect business owners or whatever because you're a business owner.
Exactly.
So, and I think people don't pay attention to that, but they should because you're like.
That's like the proper way that it should be done. Like people getting into politics, like, especially like with business related stuff, like build up a business, have a business, and then kind of get into the politics so you can understand like what's actually going to affect what. Instead of people just like being a career politician or whatever, and then just like they might understand like some things, but they, excuse me, but I don't feel like they would know as much as like an actual business person would know, or like a person who actually has like their own business.
Yeah,
there's more skin in the game for them.
It definitely makes a business or a difference. Like basically, kind of like boots on the ground. It's what I do every day, and you kind of see how it affects me. But the thing also that's we got people on the western slope. It affects them different. I feel like current situation, everything that's happening in Denver and the Front Range, because they have the biggest, more population, they tend to be a little bit more blue. and the rules that they're passing, then one of the things I brought up for as a council that we need to start watching is because a lot of these House bills or Senate bills that they're passing at the state level are affecting us. You know, it's not, they're not trying to give us the opportunity to be like, okay, here's a bill. Do you guys want to adopt it as in Fort Morgan? They're just like, nope. It's, you know, we're putting this on you. Yeah, it's like a one size fits all, and that's not our state.
Just so you know, we're going to put this bill in for you guys.
Exactly. One of them was like, I think it was like SB 23, like 2303 or something, saying like, so we have city codes. Like say these streets all over here are R1, which is like single family residence. They wanted to come and say, we're going to tell you what we're going to zone it, and then your neighbor can just start putting up an apartment in the backyard if he wants, or he can turn his single car garage into an apartment or another house or this and that, you know. So and that's not cool. Or it'd be the same thing where you guys are at. You're in Wiggins, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like where you're at, it's R1. Then all of a sudden, you know, somebody's throwing in a tough shed and running some electrical to it and renting it out.
Yeah.
So just things like that are happening at the state level. I don't think a lot of people realize. And it trickles down and gets you, because all of a sudden you're just like, when this happened? Why'd you pass this? Like, I didn't pass it. We're trying to stop it.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens. And we see it a lot with business because we do a lot of stuff in like the Denver areas up there. And like just on the marketing side, people are like, oh no, it's not going to do anything, you know, and it takes a couple years for that to affect here. And people don't see us like the trickle down. It takes a little bit for them to actually be affected over here. I have a question for like on the, I guess, the political stuff. For like city council and stuff, is there like political parties in it?
No, I haven't seen it like as far as like blue and red. I can say I'm a registered Republican, and kind of go by those as far as like business wise, conservative, you know, like watching out for small business owners, privatization, that kind of stuff. There has been some things that I've come across that don't feel very Republican, you know, that didn't get passed. I can tell you that, but I haven't really seen like a red card and blue card played like at the state level or the national level.
But you can kind of tell where like people are. You can kind of probably tell now, like when you're in the room, just like the conversation it had, like they lean a little bit more blue, a little more red.
Yeah, exactly. When you can kind of see like when we get our agendas and you look at that and you're like, what's this about? You know, so, and then we've been fortunate that, you know, I think we got a good crew up there, and if something like one came across and we didn't vote it through. Sometimes we don't always get the vote, but I like to say that I don't always just go with the green. The one of the things that I learned is that I remember I was walking out of the grocery store, and this certain guy stopped me, and he's like, you know, I appreciate that you do not always vote green. You know, you'll vote red. And he's like, because if you guys just sit up there all day and agree with each other, what's the point of having you? You know, and that kind of like opened my eyes a little bit more. I'm like, well, I'm glad I did what I did, because when you walk out of there, you're like, did I do the right thing? Like, was that right? And then somebody will say something like that to you, and it really, you know, I don't know if it's like a confidence boost or something, but it makes you think like, okay, good. I'm glad somebody's watching, and, you know, maybe I didn't win that one, but at least I voted what I thought was right. That makes sense.
That's pretty good though. I feel like that should be more of like the standard in like politics, not just like because you're red or you're blue, you're voting with red or blue, but actually like looking at what's on the table and seeing what you think would actually be best.
Right.
Like not just because you're red, you're always gonna vote red.
Yeah.
But, like you can vote green, you can vote blue or whatever. It doesn't just have to be one like party versus party. It should be like issue versus issue, like what's actually right for people.
Exactly. It's kind of like, even I see this sometimes on, like I said, sometimes we'll vote things down that people want to pass, and it's not like because we didn't agree with you doesn't mean that I dislike you. It was just like we can just agree to disagree and move on. You know, like that's the problem. Like everybody's like butting heads on everything.
Yeah.
It was just like,
Or they probably hold a grudge from like, this bill you voted against me, so now this other bill I'm going to vote against you just because you did that to me.
It might not make that much sense, but I just don't want you to win on it. So there's a lot of things like that. And I can tell, Eric can attest to it. I always tell him when we're trying to discuss business ideas, I always tell him, poke holes in this, like, does this make sense? And then Eric would be like, no. Like, he'll be like, you're full of shit. This don't make sense at all. And then I'll be like, well, this is why I think it does make sense. And we'll just sit there and talk. And then at the end of the day, we're like, oh, yeah, let's try it out. Or we'll be like, yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. If you never...
If you don't
people
have, like,
are
that
scared to have that
viewpoint.
discussion, I think.
Yeah.
They're scared to not, like, I'm going to say something, people are not going to like it, and they're not going to like it. They're not going to like me. Like, people are... They're living their life based on other people's approvals of what they think.
Yeah.
And...
But like even like I know I've seen like you work out and stuff like that. Sorry, Eric, we just started following each other. But like even like
he doesn't work out.
I don't work out. No, I've lost like over 70 pounds like the last couple of years.
No, serious?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I used to be this big now, like this big.
But even like like Tuesday night we'll have our meeting, and it's like even it's not even a big thing. I always like come home and I'm like analyzing like, did I do something right? Did I do something wrong? Should have said this? Or just all these things go through my head. I don't know, maybe because people say like, well, it's because you kind of care what's going on. That's why you're thinking about it, you know? And then like I don't usually usually I fall asleep like that. Usually Tuesday nights it takes a little bit longer. But then like the next morning I'll get up and say I'll go for a run or I'll go ride the spin bike for an hour. And then all these things are going through your head. And then they're like, well, you might change your mind, you know, or like maybe so-and-so was right. So then I'll give them a call or text them or something like that. It's, you know, it's just, sometimes it's just put on your plate and you respond. And then after you think about it for a while, like I've come back to some guys, I'm like, hey, thanks for doing what you did. And they'll be like, yeah, that's what we're here for, man. We pick up the ball when other guys don't pick up the ball. But they're like, thanks for reaching out and, you know, saying that to me.
How important is it for you to like say you have that alone time, I guess, when you're doing like you go for a run or spin to like brainstorm stuff like creativity ideas or whatever?
For me it's pretty important. Like the best way to say it for me is that I've always had a dog, like high energy, and you got to chuck them. You know, run them, and if you don't, you know, they're just like wound up tight.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I'm in the morning. If I don't get if I don't have my routine, if I don't wake up and go run, go ride the bike or lift and like eat what I usually eat in the mornings, I feel out of whack. I feel like I'm in a bad mood, and then also just some things like pop in my head. Like maybe I'll do this better. Probably like when you guys say you guys talk like about business wise, like I think about business stuff and then. I was like, I'm going to call up this client and propose this to him. Maybe we need to try this. Just a lot of things pop in your head when you're by yourself, you know, just sweating it out and just...
You also get, like, clarity.
Exactly.
Like, you have so much stuff, like, going on, like, in your life. You're just running, like, 100 miles an hour. And then that time is just, like, time for you to just kind of put that, like, on the back burner and kind of just, like, focus on the workout. And that, like, helps you just, like, clear stuff up in your head. And then during the workout, you'll get, like, new ideas or whatever. And then pull out my notes app, just write them down, and then go back and continue the workout.
The thing is, it's like, you guys probably watch like YouTube or all the reels or whatever. Like everybody wakes up, like all these influencers, they get up and they're like, here's my morning routine, 5 a.m., blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you know what? Somebody needs to make their afternoon routine. Like, what do you do after 3 o'clock? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Like, you never see, like, here's my afternoon routine. Like, how do you wind down? What do you do? Because, like, for me, I'm hitting a certain age. I'm, like, 48. And my afternoons, I'm, like, hitting the wall because I'm tired, man. Like, I need another go fast. I just need to go for a walk. But at the end of the day, like, how do you wind down? Like, what are you doing in the evening that makes you doing well the next day? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, honestly, have you ever seen that?
Like on the afternoon one? No.
Well, yeah. Like
I've seen the morning ones, and
you know,
it's kind of like
I drink my water, I do this, I write, I journal, I read. You see that like when I wake up at 5 a.m. and they're like, you never see like, what do I do
when I'm winding down? How to wind down the day, huh?
Yeah.
There's some that I've seen. They haven't done like specific videos on it, But kind of like the morning routine, I mean, people don't like it, but I think it might be kind of complete bullshit. Because if you're sitting there seeing like, oh, I need to drink water, I need to do this, what you need to do is put your phone down and do something else, I think. Like, because then you start living a reactive life to whatever you're seeing on the social media stuff to like really, like you said, go for a run, just clear your mind, brainstorm the ideas by yourself. But there's one thing that I do personally in the afternoon, like my stuff, like I like to do like write my stuff down for the day, what I'm gonna do, tasks, and I'll review them at night. Because then you'll be like, you have a bad day, you feel like you didn't do shit all day, and then you just review like, hey, well, I actually did all the stuff I said I was gonna do. So I mean, like you said, it kind of brings that little, I guess, little confidence. Like, oh, I guess it wasn't that bad. You know, I got my stuff done. So, but yeah, I think that's actually more a necessary one though.
Yeah, like towards the end of the day, like, what am I going to do differently tomorrow? Like, I don't do it. I'm not going to say that I do it, but, you know, you never see or hear about that kind of stuff that much compared to, like, my morning routine when you, like, listen to Goggins and those guys, you know, like, I drink lemon water, I do, like, this and that, but you never hear, like, I do this before I go to bed.
So is that one of the guys? Is that one of the guys you listen to when you run Goggins? Is that why you get on those tracks?
Burn the shit.
Yeah, he was gonna carry the boats or whatever.
And as you're mile like 15 as you're going through it.
I listen to him. The parts that I like when he listens, like that I've heard, he's like, you know, I procrastinate. What does he say? Like as fuck or however he says it. He's like, I look at my running shoes for 30 minutes.
I'll sit there
sometimes. You know? And I'm like, thank God somebody else is that way too. You know, it's like I sit there. I'm like, do I want to do this today?
Yeah, I literally listened to a video of him this morning.
And he's always making them while he's running.
Yeah.
It's like he's always out there, like no matter what, like he's going at it.
Yeah, when I go out there, like I was like, I want to run fast this time, but then I'm out there running like in the dark now and the sun's coming up, and I stop and I'll take videos and put it on my story. I was like, you know what, I'm not so worried about my time. You just like sometimes stop out in the middle of the country and like take it all in.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty cool watching everything wake up. You know,
it's interesting. Going back to the kind of like the stuff. How did you get like involved in all these, I guess, things you have on your resume, like
all the associations
and stuff? Like, did you just kind of like, since your dad was always like in real estate, also, did you always like kind of want to do more stuff in there, or you kind of just slowly went into, or how did you come about all that?
So my dad probably sold real estate since like '89. He officially retired about a year ago. He didn't redo his license, so he's done. But he was involved, but I was probably just your typical punk kid. I didn't pay attention to what my dad did. Probably like my kids don't know what I do half the time anyways, you know. But when I got on the board, it was the benefit of being on a smaller board. Like say we only had 60 realtors between Wiggins, Fort Morgan, and Brush. We have an AE who takes care of everybody's stuff, and her name was Mary Lou, and she came to me and she's like, I need this position filled, do you want to do it? And I'm like, sure. But not only did I fill that position, there's meetings, there's a fall meeting, there's a spring meeting, the time there's a summer meeting, there's a realtor day at the Capitol. I just started going to them. I would go up there, I didn't know anybody. I met a lot of people.
Where were they held? Here in Morning County?
No, they're all usually held so in the fall, they're always held at the Broadmoor.
Okay.
And then in the winter, they were in Denver, downtown somewhere usually. Realtor Day at the Capitol was close to the Capitol, and then we'd go over to the Capitol and have meetings. Like they'd come in and talk to us. And then in the summer, they were usually like in a mountain resort. So it was basically everybody from out the state who was in charge of their board, like the president. So for instance, like the president of the board and myself had a vote when there was a new president, or now it's called the chair for the Association of Realtors. Like we had a vote. And then, but I just started going by myself. I'd sit in there and just start observing. Then we had a lady, her name was Amy Dorsey. She got voted in. She was the CAR president. And, you know, she took me under her wing too. She introduced me to a lot of people. She put me on some state committees. And it's all about just, you can say you're something, but unless you like really put yourself out there and get involved and people see you, then it really becomes something like your own, if that makes sense.
how awkward is that? I think like just going, you don't even know anybody. You're like, I don't even know if I should be here. Who am I going to talk to?
It was awkward. You know, it's like probably I've never really been the new kid out of school, but it's probably like being the new kid at school and it's lunchtime and you got to like, where are you going to put your sit at the cafeteria? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but the thing at the time is I think, so like 20 years ago, I was like 28 when I started selling real estate. So I was like the young one. And I think the average age of a realtor was probably like, say like 40. I was 28. So
did you receive like pushback just because you were younger?
No, actually, it was the opposite. When I would sit there, we'd have like the big board meetings, and everybody'd sit there, and people would be like, "Hey, I'm glad to see you here. It's nice to see some young people involved," and you know that really helped as well. Exchanged a lot of business cards. This was like before Facebook and all the social media was out there. You know, flip phones still, but so it was nice. You know, a lot of the older guard took me under their wing, which was really nice. And then, like I said, I started going to like Realtor Day at the Capitol. My buddy Corey was at the state level at that time, so I'd sit there and he's like, "Hey, is Brian here?" And then so we would chat, and you know, I was like, "How do you know that guy?" I was like, "Oh, we went to college and we're in a fraternity together," and that kind of stuff. So like when it was time for the FPC, and I didn't even know what those existed, and a lot of people wanted to be his. But the lady at the time, Rachel Forest State, she's like, "Call Brian," because she know like that I was his friend and we were buddies, you know. So we had that relation. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. It was just always nice. And then as I went up, you just meet more and more people. You travel around the country, you meet more brokers. You pick up referrals that way. You send out referrals that way. It's like just all about networking too, you know, when you go there. The one thing I would say too is that, say when I started selling real estate, and this is just my opinion, of course, is that the local realtors, I felt like you were kind of like, everybody's like, "What's that guy doing? What's that gal doing?" You know, everybody's like suspicious, or not, I wasn't suspicious, but you're all kind of very competitive against each other almost, you know. And the one thing I went up there is that now all my friends are realtors basically. Like we talk to each other. I don't look at them competition. If something goes wrong, I'll call them up and be like, "Hey, did this happen to you? This happened to me," or vice versa. And I'm like, "I'm going to try this. Have you tried it?" You know, or they'll see something I do and they'll like call me up. They're like, "Pull that off. That's dumb," or this, you know, like, so
That's important.
That's all very constructive. And I think that's important.
Do you think it was just because like you guys were like in different markets, or is it just like
no, even
that they have like experience with it? And it's like there's plenty of business to go around for everybody.
It's kind of there's plenty of business to go around. What I learned is that the more people I knew in real estate, the better off my business was, if that made sense. Because I can't know everything. Like you guys don't know everything. I'm sure you talk to other people or you watch other things and you're like, "Hey, I like that. I'm going to incorporate it in my business." And if I was out in Denver, you know, if I went out to the ball game or if we went to dinner, it was always, you know, a handful of brokers, and they all worked in different offices. And we would just sit there and we'd gab and we'd talk about the market, or we would just talk like friends. But it was always nice to have that person to pick up the phone and ask them a couple questions.
Do you still feel like there's that, like, I guess, that friendship, I guess, in between realtors, like even like in smaller towns, like here? Or is it, or do people feel like a little bit like he's taking my clients and stuff like that?
I think there's a good relationships here in Fort Morgan. I don't ever feel that way personally, like somebody's taking mine. I don't know anybody who else really feels that way. I feel like everybody, it's a lot better, like people call each other up. You know, if you have something coming on, I can call somebody, be like, "Hey, what do you got coming on the market?" or vice versa. Say a home pops back up on the market, I can call that broker and be like, "Hey, what happened? Like, what can you tell me?" You know, they can't disclose everything, but I'm like, "Can you kind of give me a hint?" Because I know, like, say you're going to call me, like, "Why'd that house on Meeker pop up?" I'm like, "Well, let me find out." So I can tell you what I know, or there's only certain things they can disclose, but I feel like everybody works pretty good together, which is nice. It's pretty friendly.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's interesting. Going back a little bit to the city council stuff, how much power does like somebody like do you actually like have? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it sounds kind of weird, but it's like power. I guess is like that's why the people give you the power, I guess, to be in there because they vote you in.
Yeah.
But so, do you actually have power in there to an extent, or?
As far as like calling somebody up and be like, hey, fix this pothole or something like that, I can't do that. Kind of how our charter works is we've got the council, and the people that we can hire is the city manager. The current one is Brent. So if something's happening, I call Brent and be like, hey, Brent, I got a call from somebody down the street. They're complaining of a pothole on Cherokee and Cheyenne Street. So Brent's like, all right, thanks for the heads up. He'll call somebody from the streets department. They'll go check it out. Then usually he'll get back to me pretty quick and be like, hey, Brian, yeah, that is pretty bad. We're going to take care of it. I can't call anybody underneath him and be like, I can't call the streets department head guy and be like, hey, there's a problem over there. You guys need to address it. The channel needs to go through Brent. And then from there, it goes down, if that makes sense. We're not in charge of hiring anybody underneath Brent or firing anybody. The only thing is that we're in charge of the city manager. And so he reports to us what's going on, and then vice versa. We go back and forth. Same with the chief of police. They passed that 2E. I think it's maybe going on 4 or 5 years now. That one's still...
What does that one consist of? What is that one?
So what it is, it's that the city manager used to oversee the chief of police. And then, of course, the chief of police oversees the police department. Well, they took it to election, I believe the year, or maybe it was when I got voted in 4 years ago, but they put it to election, so they put the chief of police underneath council. So the chief of police technically has 7 bosses, 6 councilmen and the mayor. And we voted it, the citizens voted it, we passed it, but there's so many rules we're still trying to like, in terms of us being over him, it's tough because we're still learning. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know what the best analogy is, but one of the reasons I'd like to stay on it is because I feel like that needs to be worked out. Like we have a charter that specifically says how we work with the city manager. I would like something to the same thing that says how we work directly to the chief of police, if that makes sense.
Do you think something like that should be figured out before it goes up to election, before like the move is made? Or is it kind of like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, ideally that would have been the best part. It's like we had the baby, now like what are we gonna do? You know? So we're like sitting here and we're all trying to figure it out.
So who was in charge, I guess the chief of police before?
The city manager.
Okay.
So there's certain things like the city manager is still in charge of like the finance with him. We're not in charge of the finance. We oversee like the budget. They bring us the budgets, of course, and we vote and pass it. But yeah, that one's going to be a work in process. There's still some kinks that need to be worked out, in my opinion, with that. We also oversee the judge. There's a judge, that sits down there at the municipal court, and then also the fire chief, Trey. I don't know if you guys know Trey, but he's the current chief, Trey Baum.
Okay. Yeah.
So. And that's pretty cool. Like he just reports to us and tells us what's going on. Going down to the fire department, you see the white trucks. White trucks are rural. The red ones are the city of Fort Morgan. That's like stuff I never even knew. Grew up here my entire life. Had no idea there was 2 different kinds. But that's.
I didn't know. I didn't know either.
So now if you see like a white one out there, you're like, that's the rural one, but it still might be the same volunteer for the city, like driving it. I believe so. Don't quote me on. Well, I'm on live, but. Yeah, you got the red ones in the city, the white ones are rural.
Okay.
But it's all pretty cool, some of that stuff that we learn.
That's interesting. What's so what do you guys like, I guess, do? Is it like you guys kind of go through like the new laws or new stuff that's going on, or I guess what does it consist of? So I mean, to someone that like me, I don't know much about it. That's why I'm asking. Like
the majority
what
of our year consists of going over the budget, honestly. So like every department has their budget and they come over and then we kind of just look it all over and then we vote on it. Like we'll go on and then we just did the second reading, we did the final one, so we just okayed the budget for the following year. For the next year coming. One of the things like that we also like will vote on, if the price point is over a certain amount, it has to come to us to vote on. The other thing is, for instance, like if say the library is getting a new roof, part of the process is they have to put it out to bid. They just can't call up any company and be like, hey, do the job. Okay. We have to put it out to bid to the open. Then they have so much time to put in their bid, and then it comes to us, and then we vote on if we're going to accept that bid or, ask questions about the bid.
Okay.
How often do you guys meet? Is it like a once a month type thing, or is it like every couple months?
Every other Tuesday. The first Tuesday of the month and the third Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
We have one, it's called, that I would like to do is, and so since I've been there, we're like on our third city manager. So we're, Brent's, I don't think Brent's going anywhere. I think he's going to do a really good job. Brent's also grew up here in Fort Morgan, and he gets it, which is nice. But we have what's called like a retreat, council retreat, and it's us, and it's Brent, the chief of police, the fire chief, and then the directors. And what the directors are, like there's an HR, city director, finance, electrical, or like the utilities directors. There's different directors, The one thing is that I would like to do is I would like to be meeting now for the 2024 year. For instance, we went over the 2023 stuff. It was like the last Saturday of February, the first Saturday of March. So we're like almost into the first quarter done. Mm-hmm. And we're discussing what we would like to see done for 2023.
Yeah, that's
so when I'm making my business plan for like next year, and I'm sure you guys do the same, you kind of sit down and you start now.
Yeah.
Probably like the 1st of October, like start writing everything down and then start tweaking it. So when you go into 2024, like what your goals are. And then maybe you'll get through the first quarter and you'll be like, none of this is working. I need to redo some stuff or part of this. But the one thing is that I wish we would be getting ready for our we passed the budget. We know where our budget's going to be for 2024. So let's sit down and talk about our goals for 2024. Like one of the things is that the golf course, we added on to it. So there's going to be a bigger kitchen, a bigger eating area. There's more people golfing. We'd hope to capture those people so they stay and they eat instead of leaving town. It's nice you can sit out there, but okay, so we're going to open this. How are we going to run it? How are we going to keep it open? Do we have employees that are cooks? I don't know. So who's going to work out there? And it's an all-day job. Like my buddy growing up, his dad was the golf pro, and his dad was out there, from like dusk till dawn. He didn't run the kitchen by no means, but I mean, he was out there all day. So it's little things like that. Like we open these things and they're going to be great, kind of like the field house. Everybody's like, what's there for our kids to do? And I think on Fridays it closes like at 6 p.m. or something weird. I feel like Friday we should be open till 9 or 10. Same with like on Saturday, maybe not, maybe Sunday now because there's no school on Mondays in Fort Morgan. Mm-hmm. Just for the kids to do something, Or if like you want to go there with your family, if it does close at 6, say I get off at 5, get home, I change, I grab my kids, I'm rolling in at 5:30 and I'm in there for 30 minutes.
Yeah. No, and then I think that's a big problem. I always talk about it also, that it's like when you're a kid and you have too much time, your kids are older, you can probably know, but when they have too much time, they're busy, they're usually just, I think it's like they're getting into trouble. So it's like they have the rec center, like why not leave it open? Like, what are they going to do, be playing basketball, lifting weights, It's like, I don't think they can go
bad.
I don't think anything bad could go. They're being active. So yeah, I think it should be open, especially as the winter's coming up.
Especially. I mean, I can see like the summer where it goes off, but then the winter we should definitely be.
There's not much like stuff you can do outside anyways. Like that's supposed to be supposed to be there.
I know there's like age limits. You just can't drop off your 6-year-old and be like, go run around and do your thing. Like you got to go with them. But like
it's not
when you're like in middle school, like. Meet your buddies down there and play some pickup basketball games. Like, we can play till 10 o'clock at night. I remember that's what we used to do when we could.
It's gonna keep you out. I think it's gonna keep everybody, like the kids, out of trouble because you're tired. You want to go home. You want to take a shower and go to sleep.
Yeah. So then, like 6 o'clock rolls around. Like, what do we set the clocks back in about 10 days or so, roughly?
Something like that.
2 weeks. I know it's gonna be darker soon. Like, what are they gonna do at 6 o'clock on a Friday? Like, they can go to the movie. I just noticed because my girlfriend's son is an 8th grader, so like the movie, I think they go roller skating. But I remember she's like, on a Friday, she's like, I gotta go pick him up. I'm like, why? She's like, because it's closing. And it was like,
should be open
at 6. I'm like, what? I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But anyways, getting back to, that's something I would like to see if I'm reelected. Like, I would like to have these meetings now talking about what we're gonna do in 2024 versus let's discuss how we're gonna work this new add-on at the golf course, which is supposed to be done, say, like in April or May of 2024. Then we're going to talk about how we're going to keep it open March 1st. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like
you already lost out on a whole bunch of time waiting.
Having those conversations, because I think, like, we work with a lot of businesses, so the biggest thing, if you're doing something in your business for it to work out today, I think you're already pretty much lost. You have to be ahead of the game,
right?
If you know what I mean. Like, if you're trying to say, if I got this business plan, this product I want to roll out, it's because you want to roll it out like in the future, this thing. But if you're planning everything, if you're trying to run your business, operate your business, your finances, like, oh yeah, I just need to get by just today. It's like, well, cool. That's not how business really works. If you want to have a successful business, I think you need to be thinking steps ahead of what's going to happen. So it's like that, like the pre-plan. You need to pre-plan it because we already know in business, you'll pre-plan it and it'll still go sideways.
Like, something's going to happen. Like, for instance, there's probably lots of options. Like, are we going to, like, could we go up and a third party come in and be like, hey, can I rent this space? And I will keep these hours and here's my contract with you. And we're going to serve breakfast burritos and we're going to do all of these different things because the kitchen's going to be twice as big. There's 1,000 square foot patio going on. They're adding 1,000 square foot to the eating area. Like, can I have a reception here? Like, what are we trying to capture? Are we going to go hire more part-time people just to sit there, and then some of them will just hand out, and then they're gone, and they just swap hands, and some of them, like, who's going to teach them how to cook a hamburger? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You just don't. I don't know.
It's like one thing. That's one thing passing the plan, but then once or the budget, or whatever. Then once you pass, it's like, what's the plan? Because the plan's gonna take a long time to actually figure out and execute.
Exactly, because it's a huge commercial kitchen. You just don't go back there like in your kitchen and turn on the stove and preheat something. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But if I walk back there and somebody's like, cook, I'd be pretty intimidated. Yeah. When you see that big stuff over there and all that, I'd be like, how do I turn this thing on without blowing myself up? Or different stuff like that. So there's a lot to it. But at the end of the day, the city, that kind of stuff needs to be ran as a business, and we need to know what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to break a few eggs going into it, but let's not do that 4 weeks before the doors open, because then June rolls around and we're
just running around. You don't have a plan, so
exactly.
You're all stressed out why it didn't work. It's like, it didn't work because we didn't have a plan. We didn't,
Yeah.
And then your 2024 goals get missed because you're barely starting to work on 2024 halfway through 2024.
Yeah. It's like saying I want to work. I'm going to wake up early today and it's already 10 in the morning. You're just like, well, that went out the window.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, well, the one thing is, it's like the people will say like, well, that's what council said. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is kind of what we said, but look where we're at. It's like, I would like to, like I said, just be planned ahead, like for the next year going into it.
And I imagine like council's not like a full-time position, right?
It's not. It's like, it's borderline, but we get $100 a month, and then we have an option to buy into the city's insurance plan. A lot of people think we get free insurance. We do not get free insurance. So it's $100 a month. For me personally, the amount of time I put into it and the reading and showing up at some stuff, and there are I could probably show up at something every day, but I got to run my business, like something to pay my bills, so I can't. But the reading I put into it, and the talking to citizens, and sometimes the other council will discuss something, it can feel like a full-time job. And I mean, I do feel like sometimes when I'm working on my other business, it's a lot of juggling, a lot of late nights.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you could be making you make way more money in your business than you do with that. So this, you start like, where do you allocate your time? Like, do you do it more with this or with that? That's why I'm curious. Like, what were the biggest things that drove you to get into it? Because all that time, if you put all that time more into your business, like you probably make more in your business, right?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, I'm running my campaign all by myself. I shouldn't say that all by myself. If my girlfriend saw this, she'd be like, no.
She's like, Brian, what are you talking about?
Yeah, she's like, what? But I bounce tons of things off her all the time, and she does help me a lot. But in terms of out there just marketing myself and doing all that, it's what I could be doing for my business as well. I mean, I'm sure they see both of it, and they're like, oh, Urdiales, that's real estate. So, I mean, I think it does help both ways, just being all over the place. Because when my signs first went out, people were like, oh, man, you got a lot of listings. And I was like, no, those are my campaign signs. And I was like, I wish I had 80 new listings in town, man. I'm like, that'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But
so do you think it works both ways that way? Or
a little bit of promotion for both, kind of?
I think, in this one, it can't hurt, if they see Brian Urdiales running for council, but also with my business at the same time. So, but I think they put two and two together. It's, I think it's out there.
How important do you think is for someone to build their own brand when they're doing it? Because now they see it as okay, council and real estate, but it's Brian Urdiales still. So how important do you think that is?
To for which part, the my business side, or the say a campaign,
or
side?
a brand just in general? Because your brand, Brian Urdiales, I guess, would be the brand, but it's associated with Urdiales and it's associated with the city council. So how important do you think it's for people to build that brand, the Brian Urdiales brand, their own brand,
instead of just being known for one business or one thing they do?
Being known for a couple things like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's very important, So I've been lucky to be in this for 20 years. My dad was in it before me, probably 25 years before I got into it, So the fact that people can just come to me, and just stop me and ask me questions, whether it be about real estate or whether it be about what's going, now they can stop me and say, what's happening at city council? What's this about? And having that knowledge where people can stop you and ask you those things, it's nice to know that much stuff. But also it's nice to be able to answer people's questions when they have those things. And sometimes they tie into each other. For instance, there's going to be, so say this, one thing, the people to use the word, we need affordable housing, but sometimes with affordable housing, that means there's an affordable housing deed attached to that. So that means they can go build, and this is more I've only sold one house ever like that with a deed, and it was in Breckenridge, because they try to keep the housing at a certain price for their employees or the people working there. And your value can only, so if this guy bought it for $300,000 10 years ago, your value can only go up say 3%. Because realistically, you probably could have sold it for a couple million, mm-hmm. But that deed keeps you there. So there's so many different things that are attached to the word affordable housing that people sometimes, I'm still learning too, as far as being on council. They're bring in more affordable rentals, and a lot of them, the ones that approached us, had deeds. So honestly, the people working, even a single teacher made too much money to rent there. One person working at Cargill, one person working at Leprino, our biggest employers. Some of them are from the city, not all of them, but wouldn't even, so they could go build 300 units and have the people are overqualified to live there.
So does it make sense to have deeds then?
So in certain circumstances, yes. In our particular city of Fort Morgan, I would say no. We need something that will fit, like, I wouldn't say, like the professional people coming in, like the teachers, people working at it, La Prina, the people working at Cargill, like they need a place to live. Where they're not restricted, like, oh, you make too much money, sorry, you can't live here anymore. Like, we just need something that come in, good market value, and people can have a nice place, either to rent or buy. But basically, also what I was going to say is that there's over by Gateway, off of there, we just passed something. There's going to be 22 single-family homes built over there. Across the street, they're going to be coming to us, and there's going to be 104 put in. So it's nice to have, like, the knowledge of real estate and how it works, and then also going over to the public side, I guess you could say, as being a councilman and knowing and learning kind of that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important what you were saying, like just a moment ago. It's like sometimes like councilmen and like realty like go hand in hand. And that's kind of like what we talk about. Like sometimes it's like people don't want to get into politics because they're like, oh no, that's not gonna affect it's not gonna affect me or my business in any way. It's like I don't understand it. Let me just put it off to the side and not focus on it. But then a lot of times it's like you kind of should get a little bit into the politics or to know what's going on, because a lot of times what's going on in the politics is going to affect someone's business.
Exactly. So one of the things is, for instance, is that, we voted to close, I didn't vote for it, but it was voted to close Beaver from Maine to State. Right there when the HETV went in,
Okay, yeah.
By the library?
Yeah, by the library there on the south side. And I wanted to table it. And one of the things is that I know a lot of people that had businesses on that 300 block of Main Street that it was going to affect them going in and out of that alley as far as deliveries and different things like that. And ran into the guy who owns the flower peddler, the night before we were supposed to vote on it. Like, for instance, I get my stuff on Friday, usually like about 2 or 3. I try to read it like by Sunday, and Monday I'm like out doing like my homework on it. So like I ran into him on Monday. I'm like, what do you think of this? And passing by, because like he was going someplace, I could tell. He's like, I dislike it. He's like, but I don't have time to be there. And then some other people are like, I don't know enough about it, but it doesn't sound, So I was just like, can we table this? Of course, that didn't pass, and so it passed. I voted red. Everybody else voted green. But I think we reopened it in April because everybody was calling and complaining.
So it's closed just for like a little bit then?
Yeah, so it was basically closed maybe less than a year. But we opened it back up because the citizens called back up and are like, this is ridiculous. We need this back open. And so we,
And how are those conversations held after that? Like people that are like, hey, I think we should open it. Like, are they kind of like, do they kind of, because I think a lot of people sometimes they marry their stance on something, like, no, I'm not going to move it because I don't want to be wrong,
Yeah.
But then how's that? 'Cause it's like,
so sometimes like how it works.
I told you it was not a good idea.
Like it goes like, there's 7 of us, and of course we all have different opinions all the time or different things. But for instance, like somebody calls me, they're like, hey Brian, we got to open the street back up. This was we know you weren't necessarily against it, but you tried to learn more about it. So they knew kind of like my voting record on it, say. And so they came to me and they're like, we need to open it back up. And I'm like, I would love to. I go, but would you do me a favor? Call the other councilmen. Call the mayor. Call other people on council who make the decision. Because I feel the same way as you guys do, but I need the votes. You know what I mean? When it comes to it, you need the votes to pass and to open it back up. And I say, I can call the other ones and be like, I'm not going to give people's names, but I can call and say, hey, I'm getting phone calls. People want to open it back up. But it goes further if that person actually calls up and calls Erick, and Erick voted to close it. And then the people that called me called you.
So does that mean like other like councilmen were doing like their homework and their research with
Yeah.
the actual like citizens.
Yeah, so then they'll call, and so I think we all do our fair share, but it's nice. So the one thing about it is that, so I'm Ward 1, which is basically, say, Riverview to Railroad, and then kind of like along the tracks, literally the railroad tracks, go over West Street, and you have to Brenda Joy, like kind of where you used to live and where I live now.
Yeah.
That's all my ward. There's 2 of us, and there's 3 wards. But I get calls from all over town. Like Fort Morgan's not big enough where they're just going to be like, I'm calling my councilman. Like, you get all of them. And I tell people too, I'm like, call all the councilmen. Talk to everybody. You know? So the more people hear about it, good or bad, it helps us make a more informative decision.
I have a question on when they do like, the ballots are out and they start voting it and everything. Why are they like so confusing, like the wording on some of the ballots? Like they're trying to pass a certain thing and it's so hard to like understand them. Why do you think they're made like that? Do you know what I mean? When they're trying to pass like a new law or something, and then it's just like a whole paragraph. It's like, in reality, you're trying to say you're going to pass, say, marijuana in this place,
Yeah, why can't you just say this is to pass marijuana? Like, why is there so much verbiage in it?
Yeah.
I feel like our agenda, what we pass are called resolutions. I think ours are pretty upfront. The only ones, like, if you walked into it, like when I first started, the ones that you had to really read a couple times, not that they were confusing, but just to understand it, was, say, when we changed the electrical charge for the city. Or there was, and the reason we had to change it is because the city owns all of our utilities, but we buy it from other places. So then sometimes the price goes up. So then therefore we got to turn around and raise it on our end. Do you know what I mean? It's not because we're raising it to make a profit. It's just that's what we're getting charged. So now we got to pass on the charge. So that stuff kind of got a little confusing at the beginning, and I used to call the past mayor and ask him a lot of questions on that because he worked in all those departments, and then he also was basically on council, close to a decade between 2 terms as council and 2 terms as mayor. So I called him, but that can be confusing. Some of our readings can be confusing, like, when somebody wants to get a liquor license, those things are long. There's a lot of paperwork that you got to do. The majority of it's with the state. The cities, we're pretty good with it. You just got to make sure you dot all your I's and cross your T's.
I have a question now that you just reminded me when you said something about that. There's a lot of businesses, like, because I know there's some businesses that pay like the city tax and then some that don't because they're like, technically they say they're not in the city, but they are. So like, how does that work? Or how do they define who's actually like in the city limits and stuff like that?
As far as like sales tax?
Yeah, like sales tax and stuff like that.
I'm not 100% on this, but I believe if you're basically in the city limits and you have a business and there's a sales tax, then that's how the city collects it. They'll collect sales tax from you. So I'm guessing there's like the state tax, and then there's of course the city tax. Basically, how the city keeps their doors open and pays for everything is sales tax.
Do you think as the town grows and stuff, that like city limits should kind of like grow with it? Because they start growing, like say the city limit's just like right here, but then the whole town's growing. It's like out here.
They're starting to build these businesses like on the outskirts of it to kind of.
So definitely we are growing with it. I would say, like, south of the middle school, the new middle school, that all used to be county. Now it's all in the city limits. Basically, city limits is almost all the way up to the DLD Road Q. Up in some of those areas. I'm not for sure, like, say, Sherman Street, South Sherman over there in that corner. I don't know if that's been incorporated into the city. But over by me, on West Street, and then Nelson Road. Nelson Road, basically, is going all the way to DLD, is kind of in the city going to the east. Okay. So we are growing in that. Like, in terms of, like, those new homes coming in, they're all going to be in city limits.
What about towards like the east side of like Morgan, towards like the Barlow and that area?
So
there's a lot of new development.
Yeah, so visit like that Center Point area, like going out towards Leprino.
Yeah,
Leprino is in city limits.
It is, or
it is.
It is. Okay.
So that is like the DFA. That's our industrial park. So if you drive out there, I think there's one of those new red, white, and blue things that kind of goes like a rooster tail. I don't know what they're supposed to be. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There's like one on Main Street. But that's called the City of Fort Morgan Industrial Park. And then coming this way towards the west, it becomes a little bit more retail. So like the field houses in Center Point, that's in the city, of course. There's that building you see going up, and that's going to be a grocery store. A lot of people think it's going to be the Ford dealership, but that's a grocery store. The that tire shop, Peerless, is that what it's called out there?
Les Schwab, right?
Les Schwab. Okay, yeah.
The new one?
The new one. That's in city limits.
Okay. So all that's going to be city limits then?
Yeah. Even
think
like say I believe FedEx distribution is city limits.
Okay.
And coming this way, a lot of it's in and out of city limits out there. The city's going to purchase the old REA building. And I believe we close on that about 30 or 40 days.
Okay.
So that will be in city limits.
Okay, cool.
And then we'll switch over our city utilities because I think it's XL, REA, and that kind of stuff. So then we'll put our utilities in it. And so that will be the streets department, the sanitation department, and like the maintenance, like everything kind of behind the fire department, if that makes sense. Those older buildings, they put a lot of stuff in those little buildings, old buildings, and so that will all go away, basically knocked down. And we're going to leave parking, of course, for the volunteer fire department. So when they come in, they can park right there. It'll always be safe for them. The rest will be for Main Street parking.
Okay, that'd be cool.
So they'll help alleviate some of that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, a lot of that stuff is already going in city limits. A lot of Barlow is in city limits. MCC is in city limits. It's really kind of just cut up what's in and out of city limits.
Okay. No, that's interesting.
So why should people kind of re-elect you for councilman?
I think I come to the table with a lot of good new ideas, and I'll probably live in Fort Morgan, honestly, probably for the rest of my life. And the way I try to look at a lot of things is the long run instead of the short run. Like, how is this going to affect the next generation of Fort Morgan? And I think we need to do more of, let's plan ahead instead of always, sometimes I feel like we just react, if that makes sense. They're like, oh, this happened, so this is what we're going to do. Like, we're going to run into a situation, 100 single-family homes are going to be south of the Morgan Middle School one day. Across the street, there's going to be more. Like, how are we going to make West Street better? How are we going to make Nelson Road better? We're going to have to work with the railroad, if that's possible, to, like, widen that. There's going to be a lot of traffic going up and down there. When I sat in the forum, the school board was in front of us, and I heard one of them say, eventually we're going to have to, as far as what we're growing, we're going to need one more elementary, and we're going to need to do something with a new high school. And I think their plans are to put it across the street from Acoma, just to the north of the new middle school would be the new high school. So you can imagine that's going to be a lot of traffic over there. Like, we're going to have to...
Yeah.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah. And you know how narrow... You used to live on Cheyenne Street, like you said. Like, it's narrow.
Uh-huh.
You know, my thing is like, I think it was a country road at one time, because when I lived over there, all those other homes on the other side of Acoma was a cornfield. You know, there's like dirt hills. We used to go ride our bikes in there and like catch frogs, and now there's homes out there, and you know, that's busy. There was never a sidewalk going out there. So I think we just need to really plan well for our future, because there's a lot coming this direction out of the Front Range, just because of our affordability and I think our location. I mean, if you drive up and down I-76, it's busy. Like, I took my mom to the airport the other day at 5 a.m. and you look in your rearview mirror and you just see lights the whole way there.
It's packed.
Yeah, you know, it used to be like the only car out there. Now you look down 76 from Fort Morgan all the way to the time you get off on 470, there's just headlights behind you, and then same way coming back. So, but that's what I like to think that I bring to the table. It's just, you know, I care about the city, I care about where we go and the direction and the people in it. So,
No, well, wish you nothing but the best in your election. Hopefully, people actually get out there and vote, because there's a lot of people that sometimes are like, "Oh, my vote doesn't matter. I won't do anything," but I think it does.
Yeah, the one thing about this, my vote this November, basically, the ballots came in the mail, I think, on Friday, this past Friday. Voting's next Tuesday is the last day. It's just me, some school board, the mayor, and the other council. I think there's like HHII, a couple other bills on there. But then say, like, if I was to be on the next one or somebody else is on the next one, you got the president. You probably got some different congressmen, senators. Like, it's a busy one. And I think sometimes people, like, on these smaller ones, they just kind of just check out.
Yeah. So when's the final vote for this one, you said?
The first Tuesday of November. So, like, a week from tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this month's flying by.
A week from tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So if people want to know more like about your work, can they find you?
My number, 380-6101, or just Google my name. I always tell people, like, if you don't find me, I'm doing something wrong.
Something's wrong.
Because I need to be found, not for council necessarily, but for real estate. Mm-hmm. So when people are like, I can't find you, I'm like, if you can't find me, something's up, man, because I need to do better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully when you type in Brian Urdiales, it just pops up pretty quickly.
No,
Sweet.
should.
No, that's good. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Busy
Thanks
day.
for having me down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, with that, remember to subscribe to the channel, and remember that an act of rebellion is the question. Appreciate it.